Well, ladies, I'm really, really excited for our conversation this evening. And I want to start off with, the mindset around healing our bodies and movement in general as a society, right? Because we've really kind of got stuck as a society in this like all or none mentality, right? And it's like, but what happened to the middle road? And what happens when we actually really learn to become more connected with our body and be more intuitive and do movement that's really healing for our body versus staying in this like, oh my gosh, I've got to like just really like beat my body up to try to get these results. But if we're having pain and having dysfunction, right, that's not getting us anywhere. It's actually leading us the opposite direction of the results that we want. And that's like, a huge mission I'm on is to not only give women hope that they can heal their body and not have to live with aches and pains, but they can truly do something about it to heal so we can get back to life and really enjoying life and thriving. So I will let you three kind of take it over and whoever wants to go first and share, like, I think starting off with this mindset perspective, right? Because that's the biggest thing, right? Anybody can tell somebody what to do, but the bigger piece of this is really making that mindset shift to like, okay, I know I need to slow down. I know I need to do the things that are really rehabilitating to my body. So who
I can
wants
I can go first,
go for
Erica.
it,
As you were
Christina? Thank
talking,
you.
I was just thinking about what society generally tells us in the aftermath of pregnancy. And you hear people talking so heavily about bouncing back or getting rid of your pregnancy tummy, or even the phrase jelly belly to describe a woman's postpartum belly. And I feel like there's so much fixation on how a woman looks. Or even when I get feedback, it's like, oh, wow, like you look great for having a baby. And that seems to be everything that everyone is focused on. But we don't talk about the dysfunction and the aches. And I feel like there's almost shame in talking about that, or women even recognizing that and including that in dialogue, because nobody really talked to me about how your body changes or incontinence issues and things like that. And after birth, I had major incontinence issues, and my pelvic floor was just not doing great. And I felt panicked and scared because I thought, okay, I'm in my 30s. Is this going to be how I'm going to experience incontinence issues for the rest of my life? And I did have a lot of hopefulness when I was going through core rehab and the different phases, because there was so much focus on connecting and feeling these connections in your body. And I remember in the beginning when there were cues like, oh, you're going to, I think some of the cues that you've mentioned before, Erica, was like, oh, you're drawing your rib cage in or breathing in through your pelvis. And in my head, I would think like, I can't feel those things, but I'm going to trust the process. And over time, it was just so empowering feeling those connections or feeling my rib cage draw in. And it was, I mean, core rehab describes it perfectly, because it was like rehabilitation. And it did bring a lot of hopefulness, and it was empowering for me to go through this process and not worry so much about, oh, am I bouncing back from pregnancy? It was more so, okay, I'm strengthening my body, I'm healing my body, I'm feeling the connections, and I feel good. And it's such a dramatic shift from where my mind was before. I was focused on, okay, I'm going to do fitness. I'm going hardcore running. I'm signing up for marathons. I'm doing my high intensity interval training. And there wasn't this attunement to my body or feeling any sort of connections. It was more so of going through the motions and getting an end result of, oh, I'm looking good and that makes me feel good. And it didn't go beyond that. So for now, right now, for me to focus on, I feel good and I feel these connections in my body, and I'm seeing my body heal from the aftermath of pregnancy. It makes it it makes it a very healing journey for me.
I love that you're talking so much about healing because I think that that is such a profound word and it kind of gets thrown in a context, right? When we're thinking about people, I think so many times women, and please add into any of this, ladies. I love to hear everyone else's perspective too. But sometimes I think women think, especially after having a baby, and especially if it's after your first, you're like, oh well, I don't really need to heal my body because there's nothing wrong, right? Or whatever. I'm gonna bounce back and do all those things. But the reality is even if you're not having any dysfunction and you go back to like the hardcore, high intensity, lots of running, that's where we really start to risk having so much dysfunction start to show up. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that from a second or third time mom who actually was like, heard me say this stuff with the first pregnancy. And then she's like, later on, like, Erica, I should have listened to you and come in and healed my body. Like, why is it that healing, is it like almost a taboo, or like, is it a bad thing, right? Like, is that how we've kind of positioned it as a society, right? It's not a bad thing, ladies, to heal. I'm not telling you ladies on here. I'm just saying that, right? Like, it's not a bad thing to heal our body, but it's like, how do we start to reframe it in a way that is like a good thing? Like, it is good. It is good to slow down. It is good to take that time for your body to heal it so that you can feel empowered.
Mine is a complete healing story. I had back surgery before I even had my first kid. And so I felt like I was already starting at a disadvantage because I was already having back surgery and being very careful. I thought I was aware of my body and what it was doing and how I was connecting, but after doing this program, I was not. And this has brought so much more awareness to how I move, how I feel, what my body needs, what it's kind of craving, how to make it feel better. Like, I know if my SI joint is out, what that feels like and what I can do with the hip walking video to get it back. And it's instant relief and feels better. So I know if I go on a long car ride, every stop, I'm doing those side to side lunges, to make sure my hips are good. And so just knowing what to do to make you feel better or continue to feel good. So I've had this program, I don't even know how many years, and I still do it almost every day. I do at least one video every day. Whether I do it with my 16-year-old daughter, I'm doing it with my mom who had 4 kids, and oh my gosh, the healing that she went through. And you talk about the incontinence. I can't say that word.
Incontinence?
Yes,
I'll say it for you.
Perfect, thanks. But it's also passed down. Okay, so my mom had that. She had 4 kids. It's just how it is. That's what people say. It's just how it is. That's just after you have babies. That's how it is. But no, it's not. And I feel like that was never spoken about. Like, it could be something different after you have kids. And I never had one doctor tell me about diastasis. Never. And, I had kids in multiple states because military and moving around. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody said anything about pelvic floor rehab. Nobody said anything about that after back surgery. I've done physical therapy, and core strengthening, but it wasn't the deep core of the things, the healing that happened with core rehab. And after having knee surgery and had back surgery and 3 kids, finally found core rehab. Thought it was too late because I think my youngest was 6 years old, not 6 months old, but years old. And it made a huge difference. And it was a complete mindset shift because I was used to doing all the high intensity workouts. You have to, like, no pain, no gain. Like, you have to work hard. You have to get a big sweat. That was what I was trying to do every time I worked out. And so it was, okay, I'm tired of my back hurting. There were times when I could not even put on my shoes. I couldn't tie my own shoes. My back hurt so bad I could not move to tie my shoes. My husband would have to do it for me. I'd have to get a kid to tie my shoes for me. It was embarrassing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give this program 100%. I'm going to trust that it's going to work because I am tired of hurting every day, all day, being miserable. I couldn't be a teacher because I couldn't stand enough. Like, I could stand for maybe 5-10 minutes at a time before I was in so much pain I would have to sit down. So I couldn't work. And so it changed my life, because no longer in pain every day, can go back and work. I love teaching. And so it was just amazing, the healing that took place.
Julie, I never knew that part of your story, that you couldn't stand for more than 5 to 10 minutes. Wow. Wow. I knew your back, was not good. So yeah. And I know you had also mentioned at one point about your mom and how your mom, can you just share a little bit of her story for any women listening, or women listening who think could my mom benefit? Right. Because there is that, like you even said, is it too late? And you're like, I had a 6-year-old. It's like, that's not that. I mean, you even know because your mom's done it. Like, that
Right.
having a 6-year-old is not even anywhere close to too late.
Right. Like, here I am. My mom had kids 40 plus years ago, and she was doing this program and no longer she could run again. She could run without wetting her pants. Her shoulder pain that she just thought she was going to have, shoulder pain went away. Her hip pain went away. Like, she is a true believer. She goes, it's amazing. She goes, I had no idea that just strengthening my core would make all these other aches and pains go away.
Yes, it's the core and the rebalance of the entire body. I'm just going to add that statement on there because we always get women that are like, well, Erica, are we going to work on my glutes too and my legs? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, it is a full body approach. So just adding that on there. Julie, thank you so much for sharing. Jen, do you want to chime in here? And I know Jen's been on here before, sharing different things, but I don't know if we've specifically shared your core rehab story before, really, ever.
I don't think specific to it, but I like how both Julie and Christina talked about the whole body, because that really is what core rehab is. I come from the physical therapy, sports medicine background. And so when I was pregnant with my first, I thought I was working out the safest way possible, listening to my body. Years before that, I'd worked with OBs to create safe maternity workouts, and I was following the protocol. And then I had my son, and I woke up the next morning and I was like, I've been hit by a Mack truck. And I think I tore both of my knees in childbirth. And I'm like, how did I do that? Well, I didn't, but he completely shifted my pelvis. And so for the next 13 months, I tried to rehab myself like I had rehabbed tons of moms, and it wasn't working. I couldn't fix the low back pain. I couldn't fix the bilateral knee pain. And I knew at that point I was missing something. And I'd always been interested in fascia, but never dived in deep to it. And then magically, one of Erica's ads popped up for Core Rehab. And I fought for so long because I don't like to spend that much money just on me. But my intuition kept saying, this is what you need. And I knew I needed something Pilates based. And I'd gone to a Pilates instructor to work one-on-one for 14 sessions, but she didn't go into the fundamentals. And so it didn't do anything for me. And I knew it was wrong. And so I said, okay, that's it. This is my birthday present, my Christmas present, whatever. This is my present to me. And I bought it. And literally within the first 2 weeks, my back pain was gone. My knee pain was gone. I was able to get up and down off the ground with my little baby. My core started to feel strong again. But a couple weeks in, I was feeling so good. I'm like, I'm going to bring back in and also do my old workouts. I don't think I've ever told Erica this. And so I was doing my HIIT style and some CrossFit style workouts. And I got to phase 3 and I was like, this is the hardest thing ever. My hip flexors think that their job is to do everything. And so I dropped back down to phase 1, phase 2, and I was like, okay, I have to trust the process. I'm cutting out the extra. I'm just going to focus on this. I have to shift my mindset because Erica always says harder doesn't mean better. And for way too many years, harder always meant better to me. And the shift was amazing. My body got stronger so fast without lifting all the heavy weights and doing all the crazy stuff. My endurance and my energy increased, but also there was a shift in my mind. And I all of a sudden became okay with sitting more in the moment, being still, slowing down, finding peacefulness in just ease, not having to make things harder or jam pack my day. And that was it. That was a huge shift. So then I went to Erica and I'm like, I need to learn how to do this. I need this in my occupation. And so I got to do her instructor course. And then I took Core Rehab to a local gym where I got to teach women who had not had babies, postpartum women, recent postpartum, like their youngest baby was 20 or 30 something. And then I had men. And watching that shift in their bodies, their posture, their strength, and their aches and pains going away was huge. And as Erica knows, and I think Julie also knows this, but I had a surgery a year and a half ago that didn't go so fantastic. And I actually used only Core Rehab to rehabilitate it because the standard rehab protocol wasn't working. And what it needed was my full body fascia to be aligning and working properly. So the program's amazing. I love it. I've had it for over 4.5 years. I do it. I mean, it's worked into my workouts every week. And if I don't, I feel it and I notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is something you do have to maintain. And I know Julie has mentioned, like, she still keeps it in to some element on a daily basis. Jen keeps it in on a daily basis. And so I want to talk about that because this is always a big question that women ask us, like, well, Erica, how long is it going to take me to heal my body? The number one question I get all the time. And so, well, I know I can answer this. Jen's already mentioned how she keeps it in. Julie keeps it in on a daily basis, and you're keeping it. Both of you are like working it into your workouts, right? Correct, is what I heard you both say. Christina, is that kind of what you've been doing? I don't know where you are within the program.
Yes, I'm 5 months postpartum, so still going through the phases in core rehab, but trying my best to do it on a daily basis. Even if it's just I'm exhausted for the day or I didn't sleep well, I'll try to do at least one video from the calendar because it does make me feel good.
Yeah, awesome.
I think that's a key point that she brought up is some people, look at this and think you have to put in 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes to get the progress. But if I have a crazy day, and this even was right after my baby was born and I was only in phase 1, if I had a crazy day and I couldn't even get in a video, if I just did like a 5-minute flow, a movement of my favorite core rehab exercises, I was standing taller, my aches and pains were gone, and I immediately felt my connections and my deep core turned on. Like just 5 minutes of simple movement, like Julie doing it when she gets out of the car. I do the same thing on long car rides. I do some movement and it changes everything.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm always trying to teach is that it's not just about, yes, the movement practice is super important on a daily basis, but it's how are we putting that into our lifestyle, right? So many times we get so fixated, right? We've got to have our workouts and we've got to do our workout for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Core rehab is very different than that. While it would be amazing if we all lived in a perfect world to do a full 30 minutes every single day, that may not be the reality, right? So this is where we have to find this. We have to get out of this all or none mindset and separating our fitness and our movement routine from the rest of our life, because let's face the facts, we're always moving. Right. And for those of you that have kids, you're moving even more. And so we need to transition and connect like, oh, we're learning how to move our body so that during our day, everything that we're doing and during our workouts is so much more effective. And I'd love for any of you to chime in about how you've learned to, besides obviously doing, it within your workouts or, 5 minutes here when you're driving and you need to get out because your hip flexors have gotten too tight because you've been sitting for too long traveling. I hear you ladies. I'm the same way. If I travel a lot, I have to my sacrum is starts to kind of yell at me after a while, though it does get better as time goes. Right. But it's really understanding your body. So I don't know if any of you want to chime in on how you've worked in, core rehab. And even if it's not the movement to dos, but the mindset pieces throughout the day?
I think for myself, core rehab really helped me become more attuned to my body and even give me the language to identify what's going on. So even feeling like, oh, like my hips feel really tight today, I need to do some hip release. Or even when we're doing the fascial tissue activation and I'm like, oh, that feels really good on the right side of my body and I feel a lot more limber. And I have poor posture. Just going through core rehab, I was like, this is the best posture I've ever had in my life. And it's something that's giving me, I I feel like it's something that I pay attention to a lot more now. And especially being a new mom, I'm just constantly, like hunched over, nursing, picking her up, carrying her. So I really try to mind my posture as well. And I feel like it's giving me a lot more confidence because I've always felt like I had poor posture. And my mom's like, oh, you need to work on your posture.
I love that. And it really is true. Like how we hold our body, it relates to how we feel inside. And so posture is so much more than just standing tall. It does something to on an energetic level in our body is what I feel a big part of that is, right? Because when we're standing tall, right, everyone, listening to this, right? And you three on here, like if you just sit, right, you sit a little more crouch, try to breathe in, right? How do you feel? And then when you just even sit up tall, you're like, oh, wow, I have more movement. I can actually move. My bones have more space. And, meridians we have all through our body, right? We're just thinking about energy through our body. It can flow so much easier. So there's so much to improving posture more than just posture itself. And I know, Christina, you're feeling that, right? Because you feel your energy, a little energy boost when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like holding my body better. And when you're holding your baby and you're doing that, like instead of it hurting your low back and your neck, you're like, oh wow, I'm using my deep core and I'm using my back. And it's not always easy, right? It is work, right? Let's not beat around the bush. It is work. It's learning a lot of new techniques. Like, I don't know if any of you want to share, like, what was like the biggest, like, like technique that you learned from core rehab that really went against something that you had previously learned? I know I share a lot of those myths, but I'd love to hear from you ladies.
Yeah, the one you share a lot is the sucking the belly to the spine. Like,
yeah,
that one was me all the time, and tucking the butt and sucking the belly in. That was 100% all I did. It even got so bad. I can remember swimming laps and I was trying to do that tuck and suck the belly in while I was trying to swim laps. And it was just like causing more pain and misalignments. And it was just awful. So yeah, that one was a huge one for me. What? You mean to tell me I don't suck my belly in? Like, I've been taught that all my life. Like, how do I do this otherwise? So that one was a huge one for me, because even when I did water aerobics training, because I'm a instructor for water aerobics, so that's what they taught the instructor teaching us, was like, just tell them to suck it in. And I'm like, okay. So that was a complete mindset shift for me, is to not suck my belly into my spine.
And it's life-changing once you figure it out. But like any habit, right? It doesn't happen. We don't undo those habits overnight. It takes time and awareness. But Julie, I wanted to ask you to share, like, how do you remember about how long it took to really start to feel a huge improvement in your back pain?
It took maybe to phase 4, but it was mine was really bad. So I felt like, I had a lot to overcome, and a lot of years of doing it the wrong way. So yeah, I think it was about into phase 3, into phase 4, when I was like, oh, and then it just encouraged you to keep going, because you notice less aches and pains. And so you're like, I'm going to keep doing this because this is now working. And I really feel like the second or third time I've gone through it fully, like I hear different cues, like you say, you'll hear them again. Always listen to the video. I still listen to the videos. I rarely, like, if I'm doing another workout and it says to do abs or something, I always do something from Core Rehab. I don't do what they say. I do a Core Rehab ab move or something. But I still watch your videos to get the cueing years later. Like I'm still like, it's favorited on my browser. Like it's favorited. I can pull it up on my phone. Like, and when we stay in hotels, that's what I go do in the hotel gym is like, I pull up a Core Rehab video and I go through that. And, but you were talking earlier about how do you fit it in? My kids were older when I started. And so I don't know how I would have fit it in with a baby. That would have been a complete mind shift for me. Like trying to even get that in would have been hard and a challenge for sure. But as they're older, so we're at Taekwondo. So I just go to the back room or I take my mat and keep it in the car with the towel and I do it while they're doing practice. Or I've done Core Rehab at Taekwondo, at the football field, at the baseball field. Like I take it and I just prop it up on my phone and there are people walking around the track and they look over at me really weird, but I'm doing what makes me feel good and I know is the right, and that's when I can fit it in. And so I just when my kids are at their practice, I do my practice too.
So. I love that. No, I love that you just work it into your life. And I think that's so important and such a key thing. I do want to circle back because I don't think you give yourself enough credit for your commitment. Plus, like when you were saying you were like maybe to phase 4 when your back, you felt a huge shift or your back pain. I don't know if it was gone, right? But a huge shift. In the reality of that was probably a 3-4 months, maybe something like that, maybe 6 max. Okay. Just for everybody listening to put that in perspective, like you've had debilitating back pain and it was really bad for years and years. If I look at that within say 3 to even say it was 6 months that it took you to get, because sometimes we don't go through the phases very quickly, which is completely fine. And I always encourage everyone, take your time, right? That's really amazing, right, Julie, to think about that. I'm blown away. Like I feel so blessed and so grateful that I get to be here teaching this. And like, this is just a part of what I feel like I'm here to do. Right. And I love stories like yours where it's just like, wow, like, our paths crossed. It was meant to be, because I have these techniques that I've developed because I was meant to do them. And, for someone like yourself who was like not finding any answers and way too young to having the pain that you were having, like, my goodness. And so that's why I'm so grateful you're here sharing your story, because I just want women to know, like, 1, there is hope, and 2, like, not just that, but you really absolutely, like, if Julie can do it, anybody can, really, to have the back pain that you were experiencing. And I've had other women that have had crazy back pain like that. And it's just like, I get really moved and really emotional and really excited that I'm like, this is amazing to me. Like, I just get so excited that I'm like, well, you can really just change your life when you are like, I'm ready to change and I just need the tools to do it. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Thank you. Because you changed my life. And I tell people all the time, this program changed my life. I love Erica.
You're so sweet. Well, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you are sharing your story with everybody, because I know that others, it will definitely resonate. So thank you. Christina. So I know Julie talked about how she gets her workouts in. You have a baby. Do you want to share with everyone how you do get your movement practice in, even with a 5-month-old?
Yeah, I actually got a lot of ideas from the coaching call with Jen, because Jen was like, you could just do bits and pieces whenever you can throughout the day. And so whether it's she's taking a nap, maybe I'll do like a 10-minute video or even some movements, or even when she's doing floor time, I am on the floor right next to her doing some of these videos. So I've done in bits and pieces. On days where I'm just exhausted or it's a little bit more tough, I just give myself more grace. As long as I am moving, then it helps me to feel good, because I've had days where I'm like, okay, maybe not today. And then a few days later, I just feel a lot more off. And it takes me a while to get back into the groove of it.
So it's all about prioritizing that little bit of movement every day, even if it's just a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, finding your favorite moves that help you to feel more connected and energized. And many times when you start, I hear this all the time, and obviously I experience it myself, is once you like get started and you do a couple of things, you're like, if you have the time, you're like, I could just keep going and doing more. It's that initial, just like getting started is really like the most important piece of just do it. Just make that movement a priority for you throughout your day. So anyway, Jen, do you have some tips that you want to share that they haven't shared?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I've got stuff to touch on for both of them, but Christina said that it was that total, I don't know if people really listened and heard it, but that total mindset shift right there, that on those tough days, she just gives herself grace and just tries to do something little. That little bit, if you do that little bit each and every day, that compounds to a big bit. All four of us have come from that hit it hard, hit, sweat, leave your sweat angel, whatever on the ground kind of workouts. And to have that mind shift to where you're like, oh, I'm just going to do 10 minutes today and that'll be good. I mean, that's a big shift because there's no way before Core Rehab I would have said, oh, maybe I'll just do 10 minutes of jump squats and I'll be fine. Well, first of all, I can't do 10 minutes of jump squats, but just even any thought like that, you're like, no, I need more. I got to at least put in 10 minutes more. That's a huge thing that so early into it, Christina's already noticing. And then with Julie, I'm going to brag on her for a minute, but most people don't know, Julie rides miles, like many, 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 many miles on her bike. And one day she'd asked a question about it. And I said, try applying the Core Rehab principles. Lengthen. So if you think about it, if you're on a bike, whether it's a spin or a road bike or just a normal bike, think about what your posture is. And so I said, lengthen and then connect your pelvic floor and your deep core, which means you're not glute gripping. You're not squeezing those glutes. You're getting that lift from the pelvic floor and deep core. And she came back that next day and was like, that was the hardest and best ride I've ever done. And then she applied it to swimming. And it's just, so you can apply this to every movement. For those people who crave lifting heavy, take this into your deadlift, take this into your clean. And if you can't do that movement without that proper connection, then you're not ready for that weight yet and you just drop down. But you will quickly increase because you're actually doing it correctly. And I love that. And I think something we haven't mentioned at all that's part of Core Rehab is Erica's got a whole mindfulness section. And I know, like, for me, today was one of those really tough mom days where I totally lost my cool. But when I sit down and I'm like, okay, I can go into my Core Rehab. I don't feel like moving because I'm so mad right now. But I'm going to sit there and I'm going to get into my mind. And I'm just going to breathe and fill my core through my breath. It completely does. I mean, your day just turns around. You're like, okay, I'm not ready to go sell my children on the street right now or anything like that. Like, I'm ready to snuggle them and love them again because I just had to take that minute to breathe and figure out, okay, what triggered me? Where am I holding it in my body? How can I respond better? And then I can talk to my kids on that level. And I think the mindfulness section also then applies to your movement and it just changes everything.
I'm going to add something to that I think is really key to connecting those dots is that sometimes, many times, pain in the body can also be stress and all the emotions that us as women and moms, we can tend to just be like, we're going to shove it inside because we're just going to keep, plowing ahead. And I don't know, you ladies, if as you started moving, and you start to bring more awareness to your breath and the visualization, did you ever have moments where you just felt like you wanted to cry or even anger moments where because your stuff is starting to come up and out of your body? I know Jen's felt that because we talk a lot about this, but Julie and Christina, have you both had those moments? Even if you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm admitting this, but I think it's something that I think is again, as women in general, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that we tend to, not everybody, but I find a lot of women, because we have these conversations a lot, we tend to not acknowledge what we're really feeling. And we just kind of like, okay, we've got all this to do, and we keep going. And then when we actually slow down our movement, and I almost wonder if sometimes that's why sometimes this is really hard, is because when we slow down, we actually have to start to like bring more awareness to breath and our thoughts and our visuals. And it can sometimes not be fun in the fact of like, wow, I'm starting to move and I'm starting to try to reactivate my pelvic floor. And I've got this pain in my hip or my back or my neck or whatever it is. So there's the physical side of it, but then there's also the emotional connection that we all have with our body. They're not separate, right? And so when this stuff starts to come up, we either have the choice to like acknowledge it and be like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge that maybe I'm holding on to some extra stress or some extra emotion that I need to safely allow myself to release it so that I can continue to work to heal my body, right? And I see this with, especially if someone's had a car accident or an old injury or something like that. And I don't know, Julie, I know we haven't really had this conversation, but I don't know if you've done some of this work, if you've noticed that as you were moving and it, your back hurt and stuff like that. I don't know. And everyone's bodies are very different. But I just always think it's an interesting thing to bring up in conversation because when we bring more awareness to all of that, we can start to be like, oh, this is normal, that I'm starting to feel like I want to cry when I'm doing my pelvic tilts or whatever it is. And it can seem so silly and we don't fully understand it. And I think that it is absolutely okay to not fully understand everything. So I don't know if anyone else has any stories or anything around that or anything else that they want to share with anyone or share with everyone listening.
Yeah, Erica, as you're talking about that, I'm really reflecting on my journey thus far in motherhood and just the mental load of motherhood and the day-to-day things that you have to take care of. And I'm working on building that self-awareness of, okay, like I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling stressed or anxious. But I have a history of just trying to power through things, and I don't realize that I am stressed until I start feeling aches, until the headaches come, or I'm feeling aches because I'm like clenching my jaw and now it's aching over here. So when I'm doing some of these movements, sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, like that felt really good stretching that area, or I didn't realize I was having that much tension. And sometimes even holding that tension because I'm stressed out is exacerbating aches and pains in my body. So when I'm doing these movements, it feels good and it's almost cathartic. I feel like I'm releasing not just the physical tension, but the emotional, internal tension that I'm carrying with me from day to day as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Christina. I love that. And this is where I think like if we were to get in the science behind why like less intense movement can be more effective actually than intense workout or working out, is because of that, what you just said. It's the stress response, or the actually opposite of releasing stress, versus if we just keep plowing forward and we're like, we're going to stay on the route of the high intensity workouts, even if we don't have any pain and dysfunction, but we're literally using it as a way to like help us manage our stress. Is it actually managing your stress, or is it actually adding to stress? I can't answer that. Everyone else has to answer that for themselves, right? Because like where Julie is now, back to her long bike rides, I'm sure they don't stress you out now, right? But because you know how to, move your body and connect with your body in a way. But it so many times takes us actually slowing down to really learn more about ourselves, right? And then as we do that, we just start to recognize and become more intuitive with when we can go do a harder workout, because our body is like, okay, today I've got it. And other days we're like, no, I need the more core rehab, lighter movement, because the other is just really going to be too much for my body. And you should never feel depleted and exhausted after a workout. And I think that too many women are, and they don't even realize it because it's all they're used to.
I am working on that mindfulness connection. That is not my strength at all. Not a big emotion sharing kind of person. I keep things close, but what Christina was talking about feeling it in other places. Yes. Like we have a lot of decisions to make. We're getting ready to move. And so my husband asked me something. I was like, I can't make that decision right now. Like, I can't. Like, we're going to have to go for a walk. And when my feet are moving, then maybe I can make a decision there. And so, yes, I need to work on that and go through your mindful section and work on that one. That slowing down piece is a hard challenge for me that I am trying to be more aware of. And the super competitive, got to close all my rings on my watch all the time, every day is a little obsessive, and it's hard for me to just kind of sit and be. But I'm trying to do that more and realize what is going on with me. As I get older, I am more aware of what I feel in my body. So I'm working towards that.
Yeah. I mean, we're all on this journey, and that's why we have to look at it as a journey. And that's why I always talk about the core rehab journey, right? And Julie, you started way before I even added the mindfulness. So when you first went through core rehab, I didn't do near as much of the mindfulness work as we do today. And so it is a piece where instead of looking at it as being hard, ladies, like whatever it is, anything in life that is hard, when you notice that word come up, like reframe it in a way of like, I'm working on it. Because you said that too, right? Because when we tell ourselves that something's hard, it's almost like that pressure of like, oh, this is hard, right? Like it doesn't have to be hard. It can actually be easy, and just know that like you're working on it. Like you acknowledge, right? You're like, I just need to go out for a walk, and that helps me process. And when we learn that about ourselves, that we're like doing a little movement, clearing our head, getting out in nature, doing those things actually helps us to process things, then do more of that in that healthy way. And so you're totally in that, you're on that journey, Julie. So don't think of it as like it's hard for you. It's that we're all in this process. We're all in this journey. We're all in different phases of our life. And so it's taking what really resonates with you and you need right now, and just keep moving one foot in front of the other, and it just gets easier and easier.
I think I like what Julie said though, because she said, I'm trying. And that's one thing I've noticed when members have this mindset shift, a lot more things shift. Like Christina used the word grace, and the questions I get are worded differently. Instead of like, well, how long is this going to take me? How fast can I do this? What gets me here? It's like, how can I do this better? What can I add to this to make this work better for me? It's instead of trying to get there as fast as they can, they want to do whatever it takes to be the best they can. They easily find wins more. Like if I took a group of 20 people and I had 5 who have had that mindset shift, and I asked for a win, those 5 people would think of something immediately. Even if they've had a day like mine, I can tell you that after having to clean up puke because my son over-gagged on having to eat the carrot I made him eat, he finally let me put him in a shower and learned he likes showers. There's my win out of having to clean the floors for an hour. But they see those little things more. They give themselves more grace, and they learn to reframe. So when those, as Christina started out talking about the pressures of society, these checklists that society has given us, the way we have to look, or how we should parent, or where we should be at certain points in our life, you learn that when that thought creeps into your head, you're like, oh no, that's not me. And then the members that have these shifts, they reframe it. And so I feel like they don't get as burdened or as boggled down by all of these to-do lists and to be and to look like and to whatever. We have all these influencers out there telling us how to be. And you know what? You know what's best for you, and you just have to learn to listen inside. And when you have that mindset shift, I think our members listen so much better inside that they can say, Erica, this is what I'm feeling. I think I need this. How do I do that? And it's so much easier because you're like, yeah, that is what you need. Let's work on that.
Yeah. I love the coaching calls because it gives us that chance to just go deeper and help personalize, because the program, if you follow it to a T, is amazing, but I'm not that type of person where I'm like just okay with just that. So it's like I like to have these conversations. I like to be able to, if someone feels like, oh my gosh, like this is like they've come across a move where they're just like, I don't know, it's just not feeling great for my body. Well, let's talk about what you could replace that with, right? Because I'm never one to say you shouldn't do something, because there's always a backup plan B, C, D kind of thing. And many times it is a mindset shift that we end up discovering of like, oh, well, instead of trying to force yourself to feel whatever or to do that move, let's come up with something else to do or do more of, it's always these conversations of this ebb and flow, right? Instead of feeling like it's got to be like just straight, narrow path, right? Everyone's bodies are different, right? Julie, Jen, Christina's, my own healing that I've been through, right? They all have looked very different for us. And that's one thing that I always like to empower everyone is like, here are the tools, but I want you all to take them and I want to empower you to make them work for you in your life, right? So it's not, everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different. Absolutely. And that's just such a big part of what I love teaching, and just empowering each and everyone to like, okay, we've got the tools to help teach you to really heal your body and thrive in life. Now take it, learn from it. Let's go with it. And then Jen and I are there to offer support along the way, which I'm so grateful for.
And I just want to say,
Jen. Yeah. Go for it.
Definitely take advantage of those coaching calls. If you have not done those, you're missing out. I try to make as many of them as I can. I show up as much as possible as work allows during the school year. And then if you have them in the summer, I try to come to all of those, but they are fantastic. And I learned something new from each one of them, whether I'm just listening to other questions and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I had that question, or something, or I've asked, like you said, about a specific move that I didn't feel that was working right. And we went through it and I even got on the floor and demonstrated. It's just awesome to be able to ask you those questions and get that immediate feedback on like what it looks like and what maybe something else could work in that place. So those coaching calls are invaluable.
Thank you, Julie. I think so. Right, Jen? I know Jen would agree. That's why we offer them. I think it's just so fantastic to be able to get that.
When I did Nocta Fitness, and then I did Core Rehab, and my mentality going in was, okay, I want to get fit. I want to lose that baby weight afterwards. And what I found from this was something that not just helped my physical health, but also helped my mental health. And as Jen said, as I'm hearing some of the, I would say they're kind of toxic and unhealthy messages from society, I'm able to kind of shrug it off more instead of kind of absorbing that or giving myself that pressure of, oh, you have to lose that weight. But it's so much more. It's about healing. And unfortunately, there's this stigma around healing because I think it forces you to acknowledge like something's not working out, so I have to heal. But healing is restorative and it feels good and it's nourishing your body and your soul. And so I really love what both Nocta Fitness and Core Rehab has done for me, because I don't think I could have gotten to this healthier mindset and lifestyle if I just went a different route and didn't focus on the connections and being attuned to my body and practicing some of these movements.
Christina, thank you for sharing that. So I love hearing all of these kind of epiphanies and big mindset shifts, because I think the most important thing about that is no one can take that away from anyone, right? That is yours. That is your experience. You've made that shift, and it's only going to get better and better as life goes on, right? Because you've started to recognize these things, and you're going to start to be able to just apply it to everything in life. And that's what I love about all of this work, is that it is so empowering. It literally is changing lives. It's not just about our movement and our workouts. It's how it all, it's how it relates to everything else in our life. So Christina, thank you for sharing that.
I just really enjoyed the mindset shift and the change to how I treat my body, how I work out, the thoughts that I think, but also that with my occupation, I could bring this to more people, and I could teach more people and see the change in their life. And then working with our core rehab members and seeing these shifts and hearing these wins, it I don't know, it just lights me on fire. It's completely, I mean, from where I was 4.5 years ago, mindset wise and what I do, it's a complete shift. And I'm really appreciative for it. So thank you.
Well, I am so grateful for each and every one of you for joining me tonight to share your story. And I know that it's going to resonate with a lot of other women that needed to hear your story, and just those little words of encouragement in one way, shape, or form. Because again, we're all at different spots in our journey, and that's okay, because where we are is exactly where we're supposed to be. So thank you, ladies, so much.